What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the BookMine Academy. In this very important video, we're going to teach you or train you how in basically 30 seconds, when you're looking at a book, how you can determine what the book's value is, right?
Yeah, we're here to quickly show you how to look at this one black line that will tell you whether or not you should buy this book or not. So we're going to dig into that here in the next couple seconds.
You're over here on BookMine. You're going to be seeing snapshots of keepa graphs, and you're going to be, looking at these books, investigating them on keepa. And so far in the BookMine Academy, we've only looked at sales rank. And so just recall quick refreshers that when the sales rank is dropping, we think of those as sells. It's great to know when the book is selling and how often it's selling. But what's even more important, Victor, is, well, what is the book selling for? So we're going to look at this black line. We're going to add that to the graph here. And it's called used. It represents the lowest used price on Amazon. And you can see that right now, keepa says it's $16.83. We actually look at the last day here on the keepa graph. You can see that it also says $16.83. And if we go over to the Amazon product listing, we look at the used prices, you can actually see that that lowest used price will be $16.83, but it's also going to be with shipping included, right? So essentially what that value represents, Victor, is the current lowest price of that book on Amazon at this point in time. That make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah, it represents the lowest merchant fulfilled offer.
Yeah. Well, maybe not necessarily merchant fulfilled, but just the lowest price, which most of the time is going to be a merchant fulfilled offer, right? So what you can do is use your cursor and move over the screen left or right. And you can essentially see at any point in time over the last year, over the entire history of the book, over the last week, over the last 3 months, you can essentially look at what the cheapest price this book was available for on Amazon's marketplace at any time. So for example, we can see that the lowest used price here in May and part of actually middle of May was right around $24.99. Then you can see at this random point in time, July 1st, the lowest used price was $38.99, right? So, Victor, what are we then going to be doing with both those metrics, sales rank and lowest used price? Like, what are we going to be trying to do with the overlap of both of those?
Putting these two metrics are the key to actually finding the true intrinsic value of the book. You got to find where the book has dropped as far as the sales rank, where the actual price of that book is at that time, because that represents actually this book is selling then. So you need to pay particular attention to if the book is higher, is it still selling, like the used price, or if the price goes down, does that cause more people to buy? So these are things you kind of go into this graph and really pay attention to it.
Yeah, so we can take a look at this book here. Obviously, the sales rank of this book was amazing. Between February through June, it's very, very, very low in the 20,000s. So I mean, this book was flying off the charts. And what we would say is, well, the cheapest price on Amazon in used condition was $35. So I mean, from February, March, I mean, if you wanted to buy this book, I mean, that was the value of the book. You had to spend at least $34.99. And you can see there are times where it was a little bit cheaper, but for most of the time, it was $34 or even more than that. And then you can see in July, August, September, actually the sales rank got worse, meaning it was not as low a number. Actually, it was selling less frequently. Still definitely selling. We still see sales rank drops, but then you can see the used price was $29. And then, Victor, what are you seeing happening kind of recently here?
That the demand of this book has really kind of dropped off. And because of that, also the price of the book has dropped off. So together, they've kind of brought this book down to whatever we are now.
One really important thing that Victor said is it's really important to understand what price a book is selling for, because oftentimes, you'll find when you just look at hundreds and hundreds of books that the asking price of a book on Amazon could be overly inflated. And so you need to be able to quickly figure out what is the book actually selling at versus what is it not selling at. So let's take this one book as an example. You can actually see this book essentially has valleys and it also has peaks. So that black used line, you can see that sometimes it's in the 40s, sometimes it's even lower, goes to the 30s, but then sometimes it's up in the $80 range. So let's just take a snapshot in time just right here, Victor. What are you kind of seeing happening when the lowest used price is at the low end to the 30s, up in the 40s? Like, what are you seeing here?
And this is really great to hone into. Actually, this book in August, when the price goes down, there is tons of demand. So at $40, you can definitely say that this book has a lot of demand. People are wanting to come in and buy this book when it's in the $40 range. That's definitely guaranteed there. And then when it kind of moves moves up into like the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you can see that the demand kind of sways, like it goes away.
Right. So you can see this book is up in the mid 70s and the sales rank is increasing in number, not becoming more popular, meaning it's not selling. And so kind of what we want to show you is that you're going to have to make a decision about what books are selling for. I would say comfortably, very easily, this book is selling the 40s to the 50s. I would say potentially it could go as high as 70 because there appears to be a sales rank drop there. But what I want you guys to see is that for the majority of that time, there's no sales rank drops. This book is literally just sitting stagnant on Amazon. Lowest used price is in the 70s. I mean, it is changing. It's going up to 80s, but we're not seeing any sales rank drops, so it's not actually selling. Interestingly, what do you notice happened, Victor, right after this book's value starts creeping back down?
Another sell. So as expected, when you get back to the $40 range, so if I was just to see this book out in the wild, I know that I could probably resell this book for at the most probably about $50, right? Because that's the max price that this book is really selling at, and that's the true intrinsic value of this book.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And so you can see, after the price of this book comes down, there's a couple sales. Then we get into the next textbook season, which is January, and you can see that there's a number of sales rank drops, just like last textbook season in the 40s. And again, Victor, we see some sales up in the 50s as well. And I think one thing that's really important to understand is that the intrinsic value is always going to be between the min and the maximum selling price. And so something that you guys are going to need to learn how to do very quickly when you're looking at any graph on BookMine here, or any keepa graph, is to be able to tell, well, what is kind of the cheapest price that the book has been selling for versus kind of what is the most expensive price that it's selling for. So if we just go back to that same example here, I mean, what would you say is kind of the cheapest price, Victor, that this book is selling for?
I'm seeing around $25. Probably there in what, May, June?
Okay, so
sorry, over farther to the right. Yeah.
Right. So you're basically seeing here in August, September, it looks like the price is getting down into the 29, like 29, low 30s, right?
Mm-hmm, right?
So we would consider that as like the minimum selling price in the last year. So obviously the intrinsic value has to be higher than that because factually that's the cheapest used price we've ever had on this book over the last year.
Right.
And again, Victor, what would you say is like factually, what does it seem that the book could potentially sell for?
I'm saying the highest price is probably, now looking on like textbook season, probably I'd price this book about $60 would probably be my max price.
Yeah. So you can see this year it's getting up into the high 50s there. So essentially what we're saying is, okay, it seems like the minimum selling price is right around the high 20s and the maximum selling price is like getting into the 60s, maybe into the low 70s sometimes. And so the intrinsic value, everyone is going to be somewhere in between there. But again, what we can really hone in on is when is the sales rank the best? When is it the lowest number? When is it the most popular? And what is the lowest use price at the time? So again, all we're doing is overlapping sales rank drops with the lowest use price. Not only know how often the book is selling, but to also know for how much the book is selling, right? Victor, if you came across this book here, somebody wants $50 for this book, is this a book you'd be buying for $50?
I would not be buying it for $50. This is a great example though, because a lot of beginners get hung up right here. Well, they'll see that black line that high and believe that they can sell it for that price, but they didn't go do their due diligence and realize the book is actually never sold at those higher prices. Like, yeah, the price maybe went up there, but who cares if it doesn't actually sell? Every time it spikes, it doesn't sell.
Okay, guys, and the last thing that we want to tell you here is that zooming out of the keepa graph to see that the book's entire historical selling data is also going to be very important, because when you guys are over here on BookMine and you guys are seeing a bunch of different books, we're only going to be able to show you a snapshot of the last 6 months of keepa. And while 6 months is a lot of data to look at, it's definitely not as much as you could look at. And especially for books that have been selling for a long period of time, like this Algebra 1 book, I mean, this book looks like it came out in the 90s, the 80s, right? This is a book that's been selling forever. It's good to know how this book has performed over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It gives you a good understanding of its historical value, its intrinsic value, and so on. So, here's a good example of a book where you can see it's definitely been selling since 2015 all the way up to 2024. And you can see tons and tons of price variation here. You can see go up and down, and you can see sales rank drop. So again, on your own keepa chart, you guys can actually change your default view to whatever you want through keepa. So you can have it be 3 months or a month or a year. But on BookMine, it's only going to be 6 months. And we always recommend, Victor, right? We always recommend going to the actual keepa and being able to access more data, right? Because remember, what we're trying to do with BookMine is put you all in front of great potential books, but you're still going to need to do a little bit more due diligence to make sure that the books are actually viable books.
The 6 months get you interested. You got to go click on the book and then zoom out a little bit more and see whether or not that actually is still the case when you zoomed out for the year or 2 years,
right.
And make sure that those trends still are actually there.
Yep. So just really quick, this looks like a pretty interesting book, Freshwater Mussels of Texas, super niche book there. I can just tell from the keepa graph right here, Victor, it looks like this book could potentially sell, it looks like maybe $120 one time they're over 100 and then maybe in the 60s there and then maybe another time in the 100. And it just dropped down to 68 bucks, right? That's a good price relative to the last 6 months, but we also want to make sure that it's been selling for that in the past. So we could look at this book over the last 4,600 days. And what are you seeing with this book here, Victor, over the last 4,000 days?
Yeah, so basically Amazon sold out in 2020, and then when Amazon sold out, then the price spiked. So, and it looks like Amazon's not coming back in stock, so that's probably the going rate, whatever has been happening since that period.
Yep, and just to reiterate our point, where are you seeing the sales range drops here, Victor, and where are you not seeing them?
It's selling over here at 70, but then when it spikes to almost 1,000, it's not selling. So again, you're not going to be able to sell this book for 1,000. You'll probably be able to sell it maybe in what it looks like about 100, right around $100.
So you can see here in June, it was listed for $79.95. Boom, sales range drop, sold. Then it went up to $1,000. Just remember, everyone, that you could list a book for whatever you want on Amazon. That absolutely does not mean the book's going to sell for that price. And anyone else who's selling on Amazon can do the same thing. They can list the book for whatever they want. Again, it doesn't mean that the book will actually sell for that. That's why you have to rely on historical data. So hope you really enjoyed this video in the series, and make sure you check out the next video to learn more about just keepa fundamentals.